here. Okay. Hello, let's do a test. I don't know who's on. I don't know who's here. However, let me see if I can turn on the... show a live chat. Yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Trying something different. We're actually mobile. Completely and totally mobile. Not connected to anything. So we're giving this a shot for this week. It's been kind of due. I know I don't have the greatest connection here, but this is one of my favorite places that I would have loved to broadcast from. Hey, Michael, what's going on? Now, can you see and hear me okay? Oh no, you're in ICU. That's terrible. I'll send some good juju your way, June. So I'll keep you in my prayers. I know having these health things don't help at all when they're in the way. It's in the way of all your stuff. And that's never good. Definitely not. But yeah, so how does but I will send good juju your way and keep you in my prayers and send some healing energy too, to hope that you get past this and get out of the ICU and get home as soon as possible. You know? Is the is the audio and video okay? For you guys, can you see me okay? I know it's like a kind of an overcast kind of day. So tell me what you think. Yeah, pop in the chat to see and to let me know if the audio and the video is okay. It looks good on this end, but I keep getting a flash of poor connection, even though I have all bars, so I don't know. So who knows, but we're going to give this a shot this week. Go big or go grizzly. Looks good? Alright, great. And it's not lagging or anything, right? So we'll give it, and thanks for the thumbs up, whoever did that, appreciate that. And I'm glad you guys are here. I'm here in one of my favorite places. It's actually, I don't know, maybe I'm not telling you where it is. You can have probably a guess of where it is. But yeah, it's a very calm and quiet and serene place. I can say that much. And historic. Yes. So yeah, so also I'm hoping that I have, hopefully, this is a test really. I figured why not do it during a regular day show. I did a test before, but it was with better connectivity, so now it's a little different. But we're going to try it, you know, on the road, real style, basically. So that's what we're doing. So I'm getting poor connection, very bad connection, all of that. But as long as you guys still see something, then we're good. If worse comes to worse, if this does not work out, then I will either stop this broadcast and get home, or do that. So we'll see. Welcome. We have associate producer Ariel in the house. How's the lighting? She's the lighting diva. How's the lighting and the sound for you? I know Michael gave it the thumbs up. Love the location. Yeah, it's a very good location. It says I have 4G. It says I have all the bars, but it says very bad connection all at the same time. The sound is really good. Awesome. All right, so seeing that I'm at 87% already from 100%, I'm already at 87%. So it's kind of crazy. But we're going to start the show in a few minutes. We're looking at, it's 4:30 now. You're not getting choppy video? Fantastic. So even though it's saying bad connection, it's still working. So it's pushing along. It's like the little YouTube broadcast that could. So that's a good thing. So yes, let me see if I could do something real quick here, if that would work. Does it work? I think it does. It's not really. Let me see. This may help the signal. Who knows? This is the downside to doing everything on one device. Okay. So yes, the location is really, really great. It's it's a historic graveyard. It's one of, I actually have a picture of me on this. Okay, why is that doing that? That's really weird. Hey guys. Houston, we have a problem. Yes. Video stream stopped. It did. Okay, so we're going to get this party started. God forbid. Let's see if this happens or not, if this works or not. We'll give it a shot. Thank you all for being here. So here I am in a historic spot here, right in Bristol. A nice, quiet, serene spot. I really enjoyed taking pictures here. And it's saying live stream is offline. But I'm saying I'm live though. All right. Are you guys still there? Okay, stream is back. All right. It could just be that it's just because of some kind of weird poor connection. But we're good. Just go Grizzly. Not amazing quality, but there. Okay. Yeah. See, it's weird because the filming on this end, it looks actually better than home. Better than my laptop. So that is really, really weird that some of you are getting the feed and some of you are not. I'd say, Stacy, try to go back out and come back in, maybe. I don't know. This is an experiment on a location and also doing it from mobile. Being able to actually shoot it from mobile. You just got it? Okay, fantastic. And I'm glad you're here. So yeah, so we're going to get this puppy started. And I'm at a beautiful historic graveyard here in Bristol. But you can hear it. You can hear the birds chirping, and you can hear, even though it's an overcast kind of day, just listen to it, Plus the greenery behind me and around me, it's just a beautiful place. And I really do love coming here, as morbid as that could be, in a weird way. But, so let's get this started. So, welcome to Insight with Moonshadow. I am Moonshadow, an integrative holistic therapist, intuitive, shaman, interfaith minister, and CHI-vangelist with over 30 years of experience in the healing field internationally. Now, it's my intention to guide and empower you so you can empower others, whether that's in your community or globally. So I'm a big subscriber and a big believer in think locally, but act globally. So whether it's water, whether it's conservation, which, by the way, it's also World Conservation Day, I believe it is, or Environmental Day, from when I popped onto Google earlier this morning. Also, too, it's something where it's just important for you to be either be part of the solution or part of the problem. And I always choose for trying to be the solution, part of the solution, not part of the problem. So welcome to the show. And this is episode 73, and here we are in the historical Juniper Hill graveyard here in Bristol. One of my favorite places. I don't make it here often, and I wouldn't want to be here permanently yet. Yes, I'm hoping to grow old, but you never know. You never know nowadays what the story is. But today's episode is something that has been it's been on my mind, and it's also what I've seen in the world, what I've seen in the news. Yeah, no graves for Moon yet, no. But it's something that with the news and everything that's going on in the world today, a lot of it's about conflict. So I figured the topic for today. Now, isn't that interesting that I'm using detachment and I'm not attached to anything? There's nothing attached. It's just me, my phone, in the middle of a historic graveyard. So it's kind of interesting that I chose this spot, but this literally was stream of consciousness, and I thought this would be a great place. So now, conflict and detachment. Now, presently in the world today, we are surrounded by conflict. It's like nowhere are you safe where you can actually have a conversation. Well, here I hope that this is a safe environment for all to speak up and share their thoughts and ideas. I try not to be judgmental or critical. Whether or not I agree, I try not to be critical or judgmental on someone else's views. So sometimes you want to agree to disagree kind of thing. But with the world today, it's full of conflict. We're looking at a lot of people that are doing horrible acts of violence. You had in London, that happened, and the London Bridge just happened. You had the Ariana Grande concert. That happened. You have so many things that are happening, so many atrocities that are happening in the world today. It's almost like it's a daily thing. So this is one of the reasons why I decided to bring this topic up for this week. Conflict and detachment. Now, what can you do? What can you do with conflict and detachment? You have choices. But we'll start off with conflict. Now, what makes conflict happen? First of all, most of the time conflict happens when two people or two factions or two sects or two groups, organizations, political parties, eye to eye. There's conflict. when you have certain agendas going on and you have people that don't want to agree or choose not to agree, then you have conflict. A lot of times, from my personal experience and from what I've observed in life, I've observed that conflict tends to be two people spouting about two different parts of an argument and not listening to each other. That seems to be the crux of what usually happens. Sorry for the bump. That was me. So, how does conflict happen? Well, disagreement is one. A breakdown of communication is usually the start of any conflict. Now, how far can conflict go? Well, if you add the drama to it, and if you add the energy to it, and you add fuel, no different than gasoline to a flame, conflict can easily turn into something that's far bigger and far worse. So now, looking at conflict and what to do with it. Now, looking at it from that perspective, I can honestly say I'm really, really allergic. I say a lot of times I'm allergic to BS, and it's kind of true, because when there's too much conflict, then there's usually no one listening. Usually there's everyone's talking, but no one's listening. A lot of time, people are just embroiled in their own minutia, in their own stuff. Now, one important part with conflict is knowing what is your stuff and what isn't. I don't believe, you have countries that are still in war over, years and tens of years and hundreds of years. They're over war because they're fighting for their own personal agendas and not finding a solution. Now, can I come up with, solutions to everything? No, of course not. There's a basis. You can start with a basis of things to minimize conflict or to change conflict where it's more of a discussion, a conversation, communication. But it's not always viable when you have more than one faction and more than one person, or an exacerbated version of what things are happening. So now, yes, this can happen to any one of us. This happens every day. This happens really, truly every day. Now, yep, there's one of my totems. So they're following me. Not a big surprise. They're usually here when I'm here. But now with conflict, much of the time what happens is when people just don't see eye to eye. Now, I understand as well as you do that not everybody sees both sides of things. Not everybody chooses to see all sides of that particular idea, that concept. Not everybody wants to see anything from beyond their perception or their view. So this is where conflict happens. This is where conflict escalates. Something that we can't control. So now, also too, in going in conflict, we're going with conflict and detachment. So both of these things are very, very important. Now, the only downside is anything that comes up in chat, I don't see right away. I see it and it goes. So yes. So now with detachment, that can have a positive fruit, even in relation to social activism. Okay? So that way you're seeing things clearly, which is important, and thank you for that. But with conflict and detachment can almost go hand in hand. And the reason is sometimes you have to step back. Sometimes you have to step back to say, okay, what is my stuff and what is your stuff? And can I get past what's my stuff? And can I take ownership of what's my stuff? You know? So yeah, well, sorry to miss you. We'll try to get the replay up soon. But nice seeing you. So, with conflict and detachment, and again, we're getting, this is the weird thing. I'm getting literally 4G. I'm getting all the bars, and it's saying poor connection and very bad connection. That's really weird. So, unfortunately, so sorry that you're having a hard time, Stacey. I apologize for that, and we're working on making things better. This was kind of an experiment for this week, and hopefully this is a savable experience. Hopefully it'll be a good one. So we'll work on that and see where that goes. But so now, what can we do in getting out of a conflictive situation? Part of that is really stopping for a minute and looking at what's yours and what's not yours. And that's where detachment comes in. Sometimes we get so involved in fighting the fight that we lose out on certain things. Sometimes we don't always view from our perspective what is ours and what we need to let go and what we need to keep. Most of the time, we keep we keep what Deepak Chopra would call subskara, skara and subskara, which is a lot of, like, it's almost like tendrils of old stuff that just connects to you, connects to your spirit, connects to your soul. And it's time to get rid of that stuff if you want to continue without any kind of any more conflict. If you want to live your life in some form of peace, it's really, really important to look at what is yours and what isn't yours. And that's a big part of it. Now, sometimes within a conflictive situation, in a serious conflictive situation, there is no seeing eye to eye. There is no possibility of getting through the situation. Sometimes you just have to step back and detach from it and either agree to disagree or table it for another time. This is not always an easy thing. This is not always something that we could do willingly. Especially, I can honestly say myself that I've always been someone to want to get through an issue. I try not to walk away. But sometimes it gets to the point where when you have to walk away, it's just, there's no other option. So now, any given conflict, let's just say right now with the world today, current news, a solution would seriously be to stop looking at each other's agendas and start looking at the common goal. They both want a common goal. They choose to do it from their own perspective, their own way, and they don't want to work as a team. They don't want to work together. They don't want to work in a bipartisan, or should be tripartisan kind of way. They would rather just use blame and fault and get into all of that. This is where conflict breeds more conflict. And that's when, war happens. That's when countries fail. That's where economies go bankrupt. That's where a lot of stuff hits the fan. So now looking at that, now I'm hoping that the connection is still good here. So I'll continue. But, so with detachment, sometimes you get clarity with detachment. Sometimes stepping back and saying, okay, why did this happen? And why was I here for it? And what was the lesson in it? What was the reason in it? What is the story? Thanks for the input. Appreciate it. So looking at it from that perspective, that really makes a big difference as well. So if I am only looking at things from my perspective and not willing to see anything from anyone else's view but my own, then not only am I providing a disservice to that person or those people, I am also I'm also giving myself probably a huge disservice. So and missing out on a big lesson, on a lesson in wisdom, a lesson to be able to get further, a lesson to evolve and become more enlightened. Now, looking at it from that perspective, since I've learned lessons from people that I didn't necessarily agree with their ways, but there are things that there were takeaways. There were epiphanies, there were takeaways. There were lessons involved in that conflict that I learned from to say, okay, this happens when this happens. This is the symptom or symptoms of this conflict. So what could it be? What could be the story? What could be the issue? Well, if you take ownership of that, then now you have something to work with. Now you know. Now you can say, okay. Also, there's an old saying, to really know someone, you need to walk a mile in their moccasins or walk a mile in their shoes. We are too quick to judge and criticize because we're looking at it from our perspective. Yet we haven't walked a foot, never mind a mile, in their shoes to realize what they're going through, what's happening with them. I was in one of my lessons for today with one of my students was about being in a restaurant and how to fix a problem of bad service in a restaurant. And we were able to talk about this lesson, and we were able to talk about what are the options, what could have been a better way. And with conflict resolution, the same. With that, it's important to think that now we're gonna need to get that back, please. But one way if you're in a restaurant, it would be to try to mediate the situation, try to decelerate the situation, try to be part of the solution. A lot of times people just ramp up in an emotional way and don't detach, and then you therefore become even more emotional, and then it causes more of an issue. So if you can throw back that definition, that'd be fantastic. I'd appreciate it very much. And we have our producer of the day, Ariel. Thank you. So she'll be popping that definition back up, saying that I am. Okay, it is defined that which makes the heart of a good quiver when others are subject to suffering, and dissipates as it goes away. But when you detach, you no longer have the emotional fuel connected to it, and therefore that's why a big part of a lot of times when I have people that tend to be very, very upset or very aggro, the first thing I say is think 5 seconds before you say something, because you can't unring that bell. So when you have that bit of conflict, yeah, I agree completely. So when you have that amount of conflict, and if you ramp up with emotion, then nothing good is going to come of it. So when you detach a bit and you think about it clearly, and I'm not saying be unemotional, you're stepping back, taking a look at the big picture, and then stepping forward again to realize what is the story, what is actually being communicated here. And a lot of times when that happens, then we can find what the actual situation is. Because I will tell you from personal experience, there are a lot of times conflict is really not about the actual thing. The thing is not the actual thing. It could be a subliminal thing that wasn't taken care of or communicated for years, ages. So someone could have held a grudge or a judgment or a criticism for years. Now, in previous broadcasts, I did speak up about about words having power and choosing your words, and that is very true. But also, too, in being able to step back and taking ownership of what is yours and what is not yours is really, really important, too. If we take a real good look and say, okay, what am I really upset about? Does this person need to be the person that should be the subject? That's part of what really makes the crux of any conflict happen. So part of not getting into major conflicts all the time is the fact of stepping back and detaching. Now, again, it's not an emotional detachment. It's stepping back to look at the big picture and then discussing it. Communication resumes. The problem is a lot of people will use detachment and never step back in, never communicate again. And then that's where I've actually known people that did not speak to other people for years over something. One thing happens and they don't talk to them for years. And then something goes down. It could be fatal. It could be terminal. And then they have to deal with that kind of guilt that they never resolved it. And then that's something that has to be taken care of in the next life, the next lesson, the next transition in life. So looking at it from, so it's saying it's defined as that which the heart of a good quiver when others are subject to suffering, which dissipates after offering. That's funny! It goes by way too fast. So this is almost like Periscope action. But anyway, we'll work on that. We're just rolling with this. It's all good. So, first of all, owning your stuff. Okay, dissipates the suffering of others. Okay, and that's Buddha and his teaching, by the way. So I got most of it. So yeah, but the bottom line is this. It's not all about you. And I get that. It's not all about me. It's not all about you. A lot of times it's about what the problem is. It's about what the serious root of the problem is. We don't always see that. So you see nowadays, all this conflict happening in our own world, in our own government, in our own... the whole world seems to be on its head. The whole world seems to be losing its mind. Talk about chaos. So now, looking at this from that view, even Rodney King, which wasn't fully wise and enlightened, even he said, "Can't we just all get along?" Well, there you go. And that was his quote. He was known for coining that quote too. And he had quite a life himself, but that's the quote that he was coined for. So now, looking at it from that perspective, you're looking here of owning what is yours, and then really looking at the root of the conflict. So now, detachment is a release. Now, here's another aspect from desire and consequently suffering, even in death, and that's in multiple faiths. You got the Hindus, you got the Buddhists. You have a lot of walks of faith that do not, that also find the same value of detachment. Even though the Buddhists really practice detachment in a major way. Now, I didn't realize until many years later that I didn't realize that I actually was more Buddhist than not, because honestly, it's something where detachment is looking at, when you bring yourself back, look at the big picture, see what's happening, catch the root of what it is, and then communicate, and then bring it back to positive communication, nurturing communication. And then at least you'll know at that point whether or not it's worthwhile or not worthwhile, if it's just, going to be useless or not. But most people don't try. Most people don't try. And this is one of the big scenarios here with most conflict. I can say 99.9% of the conflict in the world happens because of that. And again, to master yourself is really key. You can't master anyone, but you can master yourself. And that's ultimately what I want to say most spiritually oriented or shamanically oriented people do, is try to master themselves, try to gain a positive, grounded view of what's around them, what's within them, what's above them, what's below them, and then take that all in, and then have a view that's more a more broader view, not just a view coming from a small pinhole. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just so opening up and broadening your view is so much different than just saying, look, as long as as long as you agree with me, we'll get along fine. I actually know a lot of people that said that. Not a lot, thank God, but I've had people say that, because they're pretty much at that point where as long as everything is going their way, they're cool. That's not where enlistments happen, though. Now it says here, classical Christian mysticism saw indifference to worldly and material concerns as an essential component to connecting with God. And I remembered all that. That's pretty good. But it's true. But see, the thing is, they haven't always practiced what they're preached, and this is one of the issues kind of with organized religion. Not all of them necessarily practice what they put out there. It'd be good if they did a little bit more. Now, granted, with spirituality, a lot of spirituality has changed quite a bit, and it has evolved. And I want to say kudos. I also the newest Pope, Pope Francis, because he's pretty amazing. He's a pretty spiritual guy. Now, the lotus symbolizes non-attachment in a lot of religious sects, and mostly in Asia. But also, the lotus is enlightenment. Now, when you think about the lotus, it's now a lot of times you see the Buddha on a lotus, and a lot of times people assume that Buddha was some form of deity, and Buddha wasn't. Buddha's a messenger and a teacher, no different than other prophets and other teachers and other ascended masters. So now also the lotus also can grow in some pretty crazy places. So this is also part of it. So it's a resilient type flower. So taking a look at that, in the form of really looking at how you connect with the world, and how you view conflict. See, some people actually thrive on it. Now, I'm not saying this is good. I'm simply saying that they thrive on it. Either whether it's drama or whether it's whatever it may be, or stress. I've heard multiple people say that they thrive on stress. That is probably a misnomer. That probably turns you sick and can cause a lot of problems and issues. But that's just my view and my opinion on that. it's also a great place to walk. Got someone walking by with their dog. I had to interject that. That's just a peaceful view. And it was a cute puppy. But now, with actually following detachment, see, detachment is throughout many different faiths and spiritualities, and spirituality is really, truly the closest path to God. But again, only my view. I don't expect anyone to fully agree or not fully agree. Just let it bounce around your melon for a bit, and then see if it's like that pasta that sticks to a wall. If it works for you, that's fantastic. If it doesn't work for you, then there you go. Hopefully you get something out of it. So now, what happens once you detach? Okay, you step back, you see the issue, you step back, you see the root of the problem, and then you step forward. That's when you may have to apologize. You may have to come to terms with what's yours and what's not yours, and say, hey, look, I apologize. I subjected that to you because this was mine, and I shouldn't have subjected you because it wasn't yours to have to deal with. And this is one part of being able to realize and know how to get through a conflict, how to get through a situation that could be very conflictive and dramatic. Now, nothing can happen when emotion is elevated. That's one of the reasons why detachment is such an important tactic and an important tool. Because if I'm really yelling and I'm screaming, I'm yelling, and you're yelling and you're screaming, and we're both yelling and screaming, no one's hearing anything. No one's listening to anything. Now, there's an old quote. I believe it's a parable. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check on that. But you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That's so you can listen twice as much and speak half as much. Right? So that is important. Sometimes in listening, and I have a flaw in that too. Sometimes I get so excited that I jump in and I'm like really passionate about a conversation or a topic or something. But what it boils down to in that sense is try to listen more, because then you're going to be able to find what the root cause of that conflict is, what that argument is, why the argument started, what was the point that started. Oh, the quote here, okay. Be an encourager. The world has enough critics already. I like that. So that's a good quote. Be an encourager because the world has enough judges and critics. I think I just paraphrased that. It's okay. Close. But it's true. And I try to provoke too, but provoke in a good way. That's also something that I try to do. But I try to provoke thought. I try to provoke healing. I'm trying to provoke something in a different way. It's not provoke argument or debate in some way where it's more to open communication, not to shut it down. And again, no one's perfect. And I am very much included in that. So, raw, vulnerable, this is what life is. Now, detachment or non-attachment is a state where a person overcomes his attachment to desire to people and things in the world, and therefore can find clarity too. Now, we all want things too, and that's another part of it too. It's hard not to be attached to your things and attached to certain things. We all have our favorite things, whatever those things may be. But regardless, those things are just things. I still am working on detachment. Definitely. And now you will get, with detachment and non-attachment, thank you very much, you get more of an elevated view of things as well. More of an enlightened view of things. That's also incredibly important. I remember before I started this, I believe I may have already started Insight with Moonshadow on the first platform that I worked with. But I remember having a conversation with 3 other people in the wee hours of the evening, and it was one person was we all had different views. Without getting into details of who people were, and all that, I will protect the all 3 by not mentioning names or descriptions. But everyone had their own view of things. We spoke about in that discussion. None of us really fully agreed with each other. But I will say this: we did it in such a way, we communicated, and even though we didn't agree on everything that each other person was saying, we were open enough to listen to that and pick up and say, okay, I can see why that is that. Now I will tell you, this kind of conversation would probably have not happened today, in this day and age. Not in June of 2017. Not in the chaotic, frenetic state, the cataclysmic state that this world is in right now. But back then, we spoke about, get this, sex. We spoke about gender reality and how it's not just male and female anymore. We spoke about politics. Get out. Was that what I thought it was? I'm not even turning around. I bet I think that was a coyote or a fox. Wow. Okay. That had to have been a coyote or a fox. That wasn't a dog. I need to look now. Yes. So, pause 1 second. Okay. Well, that might be part of the bloopers or out. What do you call it? One of those. An outshot or whatever. It's just my brain is not functioning at the moment. But the thing, but that was wild. I think that was a coyote. That was kind of crazy. But in finding, okay, no, that wasn't a coyote. I see what it was. It's someone's dog, but it looks like it could be part wolf. But that was wild. Yes, beautiful dog. But needless to say, getting back on topic, sorry for the rabbit trail. Adopt that puppy. Yeah, I know, right? And it's an outtake. Thank you very much. So this stuff will probably be in an outtakes reel or something if it's doable, if it's functionable. Hello! I saw your dog running by and it was like, so cute!
Yeah, she loves it up here.
Oh, I don't blame you. Hello, hello. You want to come say hello? Just don't hit my tripod. You can come over here. She's like, I'm just chilling. Oh, there's lots of... Hey, no digging it up stuff. You don't want to interrupt people. Can you say hello? For a second, with the fluffy tail, I thought it was like a fox or a coyote running across. I'm like... You too. But yeah, so it was a dog. So mystery revealed. And thanks for the thumbs up, and thanks for all and the sharing and the forwarding of this broadcast. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but you know what? We'll see what happens. But ultimately, to detach yourself from a situation, a lot of times, again, it's not about detaching and saying, no, you know what, I want no part of this, I'm walking away. Even though that does happen, unfortunately. But ultimately, it does take two, and it'd always be better for both people to come back together and have the conversation, find the root of what happened, look at what happened, what was the cause of things, how can we fix the situation, what happened prior to, what was the cause and effect, you know. Now, sometimes a good fight is needed. It can happen. But it's not always, but it's still, it heightens an energy. It changes the energy vibration to a degree that unless people are strong enough to dial it down, it won't be resolved. And that is the truth. So the last thing you want is for something not to be resolved. The last thing you want is to hold on to it. Now for a second, let's talk about attachment. What happens if you attach to something too much? If you attach too much to something, this is when dis-ease happens. I'm talking dis-ease and imbalance. And if you still don't deal with it, it becomes a manifestation of something physical. It becomes real. Very real. Louise Hay is an author that wrote You Can Heal Your Life. And she also has Hay House, and she's been quite a prominent figure in healing and the holistic realm. Now, in You Can Heal Your Life, there's a lot of emotional aspects to things that causes physical ailments, right? So now looking at that, if you are too attached to something, and if you don't have the ability to step back and say, okay, let me just think about this for a second. You find what happened prior to, what were you doing when it happened? Sometimes that's simple enough. And then when you go from there, then you can see how to find the solution, how to find the other side, the light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't have to be a dark end of the tunnel. You don't have to downward spiral like a toilet. You really don't. You can stop that noise. You can detach. You can look at things from a different perspective. Now, also what attachment causes is unfinished business and a lack of closure. Now, I won't be the first person on here or in this broadcast or anyone that's watching or will be watching this to not have unfinished business or not have some non-closure of a situation or a relationship. I have very little now, but it took a lot of work. And sometimes it's one-sided sense of closure. And that's a different form of detachment. If you've done everything you can and you've gone everywhere you could, then it's something where you can say, okay, look, I've done everything I could. There's no way I'll be heard. So then you bow out gracefully. So that is also part of the big picture. Now, why would I pick a historical graveyard to talk about conflict, detachment? Well, with all changes, there's beginnings. With every door closing, there's a door that's opening. So this is part of the great mystery. And this is why I chose this particular place today. Despite not checking it previously, despite not checking the connectivity, despite not doing a test video or test broadcast. Why? Because this is raw. This is as you see it. Breaking news, not breaking news, but breaking broadcast. Insight with Moonshadow. This is the journeys. This is basically like a journeys. Now also too, Ariel is saying, sometimes through death we find life. And that is very, very true. A lot of times through death we find life. A lot of times through hardship we find light. Or through darkness we find light. And also too, even in the tarot, a lot of people, when I've done readings, when I used to use tarot, which was many moons ago, someone would see the death card and they'd be like, oh my God, what is that? Most of the time, 99% of the time, death means change. Drastic, raw, unequivocal, unadulterated, unfiltered change. And when that happens, you have no choice but to just duck and cover. But that's part of it. So even with the Buddhists, in coming with a detachment, Buddhists also believe, and then you see a lot of you see that I'm wearing mala beads, and these are all very small little skulls. Now, I've only had one person ever say, that's kind of morbid, isn't it? Here's another skull. That's kind of morbid, isn't it? That you like skulls? And no, they weren't Southern. And they weren't male. But change your names and gender to protect the innocent. So yeah. But, it's like, isn't that morbid? The fact is that Buddhists actually look at death as rebirth. They look at it as a transition. So skulls is a symbol of transition. Plus, not for nothing, we have one every day. Without one, we would look horrible. It would just look bad. No teeth. Flesh would be hanging off. Nothing to attach muscles and ligaments and tendons to. We'd be problems. Right? So seriously, this is something where ultimately you really have to watch out how. Yeah, we'd be balloon heads. I don't even think we'd be balloon heads. I think we wouldn't have any heads. It would just be some kind of floppy, fabric-y, skinny thing. We have nothing. We'd have nothing. We'd be nothing without bones and sinew and tissues and all this. Because this is what happens when we have some structure. And some structure is okay. Yes, big mush heads. But then again, death, rebirth, detachment, attachment, conflict, resolution. All of these things are incredibly important. No different than building a house on sand. You need to also find the concrete root of what is holding up an argument, is holding up a debate. And if you look at it from that viewpoint, if you look at it with that mind's eye, with that mindset, with that bit of mindfulness, and it's interesting. There are actually, this is fact now, 2 true martial artists. Now I want to talk about conflict, and this is right on the topic of conflict and fighting. 2 true martial artists will never fight. Ever. So, two martial artists would never fight, ever. So, except in the movies, you saw Bruce Lee fighting Chuck Norris. I think it was Game of Death, I think it's Game of Death or I think it was Game of Death. But the thing was, they fought. They're two true martial artists. They believe in the 90% mindset and the 10% physical. So it's self-mastery. So again, we're bringing right back to self-mastery again. If you master yourself, then in the case of a conflict, your blood pressure may not even go up. Now, there are times I've had more self-mastery, I'm going to say, and I'll be honest. There are times I've lost my stuff. Absolutely. And it's always a work in progress. And I will say that absolutely, without a doubt, wholeheartedly, always a work in progress. But at the bottom line of it all, self-mastery and detachment, being able to step back, look at the situation, step back in, find the root of find the root cause of this debate, of this conflict, of this argument, of this debate, of this feud, of the fight. Sometimes finding it and finding the root cause of it, you realize there was nothing really there to fight about in the first place. It accelerated because we added fuel. We added the right amount of emotion, we added the right amount of fuel, and the right amount of passion in the wrong direction. Instead of passion being like, yeah, like making love, not war, people just rather have war, some people. I'd rather have passion. I'd rather not fight and just have makeup sex. That'd be so much easier. That might be an outtake too. That might be spliced out. I don't know. But the whole point of it is, why bother if the conflict is not going to come to any kind of resolution? Then why have the conflict at all? Why do it? Why go there? I was just talking to someone just the other day, recently, and they were like, every time I do this, it hurts. And I said, well, then you shouldn't do that. It's like if someone said, oh, every time I do this, it hurts. I went, okay, well, first of all, why are you causing pain on yourself? And second of all, why are you poking yourself that caused pain? Why do that? It makes no sense. And there is no such thing as common sense. Henceforth, why I call it uncommon sense. That's what it is. Because if there was common sense, then the world would be a whole different place right now in 2017. I can guarantee you that. You could be able to take that to the bank all day long, and it'd be worth something, for sure. But now, taking a look at self-mastery and finding yourself grounded and at peace. And that also is a big part of it too. When you go into detachment, sometimes that is the ability to take a breath and to rethink and stop and say, okay, if I say this, if I know exactly the trigger words to hurt someone, then what happens is all I'm doing is trying to hurt someone else. So just because you know something about someone, don't use it against them. Don't hold it against them or anything like that. It's not something that you should do. It's just not something that you should do. So it's important to communicate. It's important to back up. Detach a bit. Think about what you want to say and come back in. As communication, not as conflict and not as an argument. This is a big part of how to get through conflict. how to get through a chaotic torment of a fight, an argument, a war even. Even Star Trek had a United Federation of Planets, which was kind of like the United Nations in a way, but on a interstellar scale. I think eventually we will have more of that, but it's going to take our own self-mastery and our ability to not be so critical and judgmental, and not to attach to our principles to such a degree where we don't accept other people's viewpoints and other people's perception, and just kind of take a walk with it. Walk a mile in someone else's shoes. So I'm going to end the broadcast, but I hope that this has been helpful. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. If you find yourself in the middle of conflict, if you can detach and back up, do it. If you can think 10 seconds before you say something, do it. Because the life you save may not be just your own. You may actually save a relationship. You may save a friendship. You may save a marriage. You may save a lot of things. But just remember, only by detachment and then really seeing things clearly do you really see the choice that you have. Sometimes detachment is the only choice, and sometimes you have to walk away for good. And that's not something that is always the best way. Sometimes it's the only way. But that would be and should be a last resort. From me to you. Now I want to thank you all for spending time with me here with Insight with Moonshadow, here in Juniper Hill Park, Juniper Hill Cemetery, historical cemetery, not a park. To me it might as well be. Here in episode 73 of Insight with Moonshadow. All of you are my inspiration, and it's all of you that really fuel my passion to continue doing this week to week. 73 episodes, and it's only seemed to involve you get more and more evolved, and we're continuously trying to learn more and do more and be more. Like I said, self-mastery. So this is what we do week to week. Whether we can or not, whether we like to or not, we do it. So you can subscribe to my social media. You can look at phoenixrisinghealingarts.com for all my social media. Also, there's a tab, Be a Social Activist. You can click on that for places and charities and things that touch my heart, and you can donate and become more active socially with those causes. All I have to do is click on them, and it'll bring you right to their website, and that would be one way of being part of the solution, not part of the problem. So as always, be strong, be amazing, be you. Thank you all for coming. Peace.